Yeah, sure.
Okay. Is there any other public comment? Would you raise your hand and then we'll go from there? Do you see anybody that's got a hand up or anything?
Henry, yes, I do see Leonardo Gio.
Okay.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Leonardo Gio. I have taken a consulting position with the Northwest Hills Council of Governments as their Rural Healthcare Resource Coordinator. And so, of course, thank you all for your support on that position. So I'm just here today to briefly introduce myself and get somewhat familiar with some of you. I know that I've been in touch with most of the town social service offices, so I appreciate their feedback and support. And I look forward to connecting with all of you further.
Thank you. Is there any other commentary?
You did have someone calling in, but apparently I'm not sure what happened there.
Seeing none, I would like to go on to the report of the executive director. So Rob, why don't you take care of that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick updates. We do have another staffing transition in progress. Janelle Mullen is going to be taking her talents to private consulting within the region. So her last day is February 24th, which will be upon us fairly quick. And good luck to Janelle. And that will turn us into basically the regional service survey that will be coming out to you likely within hours after this meeting today. Essentially, that's going to be a survey asking for your input, and this is to the chief elected officials of the 21-member towns, for your input as far as the core services that the COG provides, services that are of important nature, and other services that we do provide to the region. And basically, it's just an assessment of your value about the different services that we do provide. So it will kind of help guide us moving forward, not only through the end of this fiscal year, but moving forward beyond that, with an effort potentially to staff up in the areas that are deemed important for us to provide, put some horsepower behind those services. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there, to expect that in your inbox. If you can, it shouldn't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes, probably closer to the 10-minute side, to complete this. But the information we're going to gather is going to be absolutely critical into where we're going and how quickly we can staff up to meet the needs and the desires of the region. So just be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we'll have responses back within a week or so, and certainly I'll send out a reminder if need be. But we should receive that in the next few hours after the meeting. And then also we have this. Ed brought this up before in the past. We have an upcoming training exercise for CEOs and EMDs in the region for Demis Region 5. And previously I'd approached the board for endorsement of, I think it was approximately $900 contribution from NHCOG. The fee, the cost for this training will be split between the 3 COGs in Region 5, NHCOG, NVCOG, and WestCOG. And after going through a greater detail as far as securing what we need for this training, it became apparent that it was going to be more than $900.
So we're going through the cloud.
Oh, sorry. It will be more than $900. So through the exercise with special consultant Paul Gibb and others, we determined that the worst case scenario of $1,845 per COG is probably the number we should be looking at. We're pretty confident it will be below that number, but I did secure support from NVCOG and WestCOG for that amount, and I just wanted to put this forward to the COG and let me know if there are any concerns or issues with that. I do have the authority to expend up to $2,000. So I'm just kind of bringing this forward for your information. If you have any questions, concerns, I'll take those. And that's really the update that I have at this point.
Rob, what is the
comments?
money used
Sorry.
for? Is it to
It's-
pay?
Yeah,
pay
it's
a
for-
presenter or?
It's for the presenter for the facility. It's going to be at the Litchfield Inn. Thanks for reminding me. March 31st is a date. It's going to be in the morning. Well, it'll be breakfast, be presentations. It's all based on cybersecurity. That information should have gone out or will be going out as far as hold the date. And then lunch will be served after the completion of the education in the morning. So it's kind of like a 2/3 of a day commitment. So.
Very good. Are there any other comments? Rob, any other things to add? Or we'll go on to Commissioner Boughton, Mark Boughton, who is here, I hope.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good.
I believe I have to share the screen, so I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, Rob's getting that set up. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Boughton, Commissioner of the Department of Revenue Services, and also the Governor's Senior Advisor on Infrastructure. I've been tagged or tapped, if you will, to lead the implementation of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act passed in Washington, D.C. I've got a PowerPoint for you. I'll try to keep it as painless as possible. Many of you have seen it already. If you've been to COST, if you've been to CCM, if you've been to maybe some other agency or entity, you might have seen me do this. And I do keep updating this. So it's not always the same, but I did want to kind of just walk you through quickly how this is going to work. Why am I doing that? Because it's important to you to know how you can leverage the IIJA to get resources within your community to fix longstanding infrastructure issues and problems. So I've got an estimation of Connecticut allocations. I've got an update from Washington here. And I have a deep dive into DOT into DEEP, which I'll keep relatively quick. And then we can do some Q&A for our mayors, first selectmen, and staff out there. So we can go to the next slide, Rob. Okay, this is probably, everybody keeps hearing about all this money that's coming to Connecticut, and they have the impression that Uncle Sam is going to show up with a check and just give it to us. And it's not quite like that, okay? This money, $1.2 trillion over the United States of America, is bundled in two ways. And that's, if you had any takeaways here, you should think about there's two pieces of this. One is the pre-authorized transportation money. That's $650 billion that goes into existing programs within our state DOT. DOT is broken into FHWA and FTA. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And that money is split up. Our piece of that money is split up into those things. So they've already got a process to deploy and distribute that money. And then probably what you'll see is they'll take projects from 2025, 2024, 2023, and move them up to 2022.
Yeah.
The other piece, though, and what you should be interested in, is the new funding that's available. Of the $1.2 trillion, $550 billion nationally is a mixture of incremental funding for existing programs and net new opportunities, formula funding, and competitive grants. You'll see there's $24 billion that's marked for other. I'll explain about that in a little bit. There's environment, $71 billion, utilities, $185 billion, and transportation, $270 billion. So that's where there'll be a lot of opportunity for regions, COGs, cities and towns to go for that. And my job as the governor's advisor, along with my small team, is to help you do that. I'm a force multiplier for you, particularly our small towns that don't have access to maybe a city engineer or a town engineer or a town planner. I'm here to help do that for you. Okay, Rob? Okay, so
Sorry,
what can
Mark, I'm going to jump in here real quick. It's Mike Chris. Hold on one second. I apologize. Can everyone just mute themselves? I mean, it's not that hard. Push the little mute button, please, so we can hear Mark's presentation and give him a little respect, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. God bless Harrington. Okay, so what does that mean for Connecticut? Well, Connecticut's going to receive, over the next 5 years, about $6 billion, and that's split up amongst those two programs I mentioned on the previous slide. But $3.5 billion is for highway programs. $561 million in Connecticut is for bridge replacement and repair. That's completely new money. It's $500 million to fix some of these old bridges that have come close to falling down. It was actually kind of ironic when the president went to Pittsburgh last week to talk about infrastructure, and a major bridge fell down or collapsed. Thank God, I don't think anybody was killed, but it was a very scary situation. $1.3 billion to improve public transportation, $445 million to improve water infrastructure. A lot of that money is geared towards replacing lead service lines and pipes. $445 million statewide is not a lot of money for that problem, as you all probably are aware. In Danbury, I could probably spend more than that. We have water lines that go back to the 1880s that are obviously lead lined, and we've been replacing them slowly, but it's a tremendous expense. But at least it'll get us jump started. $100 million to provide broadband coverage across the state of Connecticut, and the state has also put in $70 million. So we're going to try to develop not our own network. My recommendation, as I said, at cost was to utilize our existing network and our providers and work together to bundle our buying power to drive down the cost of those services to everybody, and to serve poorly served areas, rural areas that don't have fiber optic, and actually a lot of inner city areas don't have that as well. $62 million for airport infrastructure development. They already spent that, shocker. $53 million in money we also have put in there over last session to support expansion of the EV charging network. So that'll primarily be, it'll be three ways that'll get done: the I-95 corridor, the I-84 corridor, and public-private partnerships with convenience stores, companies like Starbucks, McDonald's that were interested in popping them in. We're looking to partner with them where they would pick up half the cost. And that way we can buy more chargers. $6.4 million to protect against wildfires. Believe it or not, that is a problem here in Connecticut. And $13 million to protect against cyber attacks. So that is roughly the $6 billion that we're slated to receive. Next slide, please, Rob. Okay, our objectives are to drive long-term gains, right? Ensure equitable benefit for infrastructure investments. And the most important, that third bullet, rapidly apply for and deploy funds. You know, the Daytona 500 is coming up in about a week or so, right after the Super Bowl. And I always like to think of Ricky Bobby in this problem. If you ain't first, you're last. So we got to be first. We got to be right up there in the top 3 or 4 in line for all these monies, which means that the state and our COGs and our local governments got to move quickly, because we know that the political climate can change. It often does. A year is a lifetime in politics, as everybody knows. And so we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We don't know what's going to happen in Congress. If there's a change in Congress, maybe they'll change the rules. Maybe they'll defund it. If there's a new president in 24, potentially maybe they'll pick different areas where they want to focus in on. So we want to get our stuff together as fast as possible. We're a small state. We should be able to do that. And I have a couple of asks at the end here to help us do that, right? My job is also to facilitate innovation, and your offices are really the centers of innovation. You all know how to get stuff done with less money. I know I did your job for 20 years, so I get it, and I'm here to help, provide resources, staff, help write grants, things like that for you to get things done so you can access some of these dollars. And of course, most importantly, coordinate across agencies on shared opportunities and challenges. So my job is to keep DEEP and DOT talk all the time. My job is to keep them talking. DPH is a big player in this. My job is to keep them talking. Making sure that our COGs feel like they're part of this solution. And obviously our local cities and towns. And we'll be conducting, starting in March, once a month meetings for if you have a chief of staff or administrative assistant, or maybe yourself, a 1-hour meeting every month just to update all of our cities and towns where we are in this program. And that'll be led by I think many of you might know him already. Steve Nocera, he used to work over in Torrington, worked for me for a long time. So Steve will be heading up that outreach to you all. Okay, next slide. All right, now I'm the coordinating team. I'm in the middle. So there's me, senior advisor to the governor for infrastructure. I have a small supporting team that we've hired up around me. The people I work with are Office of the Governor, OPM, DECD, Office of Workforce, and DAS. And then the agencies on the left, DOT, DPH, DSPP, CAA, and CPA, they get direct money. They're getting direct funding allocations from the feds. And so they'll be designing, they'll be planning, they'll executing all of the IIJA funded projects that are going into the existing funding streams. And there are new funding streams, but they're not competitive. They're just, hey, we're going to give 40 million to DEEP to do project X, right? And then they're going to apply for national competitive grants on behalf of the state. And they may work with some regions and some cities and towns. But I would really like to drive this competitive grant side through our COGs. And I'm going to be meeting later with a lot of the executive directors, including Rob, not today, but later, earlier in March, and talk a little bit about how I think we can do that if we can all get on the same page, which I think we can. We got great executive directors. I serve as the administration's senior public voice. I'm the one out there talking to people. That's why I'm here today. I advise the governor by elevating interdependencies and shared risks and opportunities. The governor and I meet once a week about infrastructure issues, and then we meet bi-weekly with the agencies on the left under the WHO. And so I also get the agencies on the right that would advise us about bonding, how do we have the workforce available, that kind of thing, procurement, et cetera. Okay. Now I put this slide up. As I won't go through the whole thing because it'll torture you, but I put it up to give you an example of why it's so hard for a local city and town in Connecticut to run this on their own. All three of these categories, and these are only three, there are over 40 different competitive grants, and all of them have 40 different requirements. And so, for example, the state and local cybersecurity grant, which you could apply for, it's $1 billion program nationally, but in order to apply for it, we, the state of Connecticut, must submit a comprehensive plan, and then it has to have all those items on the bottom, and then your plan for cybersecurity must fit in with our plan, which then must be sent up to the federal government. Broadband's the same thing. We have to have a 5-year action plan, and we just hired a broadband czar, person that really is good with this stuff, that can help design this so that we can work with you so you can get your community lit up and wired up for broadband. And then the same thing for the digital equity capacity. Those are for areas that are poorly served and historically been poorly served. You got to provide a plan. Everything requires a strategic plan. To design the strategic plan takes time, energy, and a lot of consultants. We're going to try to have template plans for you that you can just plug your town's name in and a nice narrative of how it fits in with the overall state plan. It's a lot of work, but that's one of the goals I've set for our little team. Okay. What's happening in Washington? Well, good news today. This morning, I opened up my computer and we finally got guidance for the broadband. Now, each of these grants requires guidance from the federal agency that oversees it. That guidance is pages upon pages long. The broadband guidance is nice and it's helpful, but they're not accepting grants applications until September 1, 2022. So it won't be till the end of the summer. So they are working on this stuff, and it's really important. As I mentioned, the guidance is on the bullet on the right. Mitch Landrieu is doing what I'm doing, but he's doing it at a national level. He's a former mayor of New Orleans and also lieutenant governor of Louisiana. He's got a task force. We met with him 2 weeks ago. The governor met with him personally. He was in Washington last week. And they're starting to kick out this guidance. We have a new guidebook that they just kicked out for us, which is going to be helpful. And you'll see that funding on the right side, funding to be released in FY22 budgets passed. So right now we're operating off of a continuing resolution. The funding for the IIJA is not available yet, but it should be, should they come up with a spending plan. Now, one thing that you should be aware of is that if you have leftover ARPA funds and you're not sure what to do with them, I would put a reserve in on my budget and you can use those as your local match. So it won't cost your taxpayers anything. Every one of these grants, when we apply for them, I've got to show what's the local match. Is there a state match here? And is there, I'm going to use Mike Harwinton match. Well, if you don't have any money, it's going to be hard to do. And I know how hard it is to put these numbers together. So if you have leftover ARPA money, keep it aside, don't spend it, and you'll be able to use that as a local match. It's up to $10 million, so that should cover just about every project out there. Generally, the feds want an 80-20 split or a 90-10 split. Okay, Rob? Okay, DOT. There's some good slides in here, but I won't kill you with all of them because you probably have seen this already. But if you look at FHWA, that's primarily highways. That's the stuff you drive on that are state roads. And FTA are primarily trains and other non-highway transportation, ferries and things like that. Okay, so for 2021, you'll see Connecticut got $549 million. In 2022, we're going to receive $788 million. That's a 43% increase. Same thing on the train side. We were at 200. We're going to go up to roughly 250, a 24% increase. So this is significant. And over the lifetime of this program, you'll see each year it goes up a little bit more and a little bit more. By 2026, we're at about a 49% increase in both programs. That's the bottom box that you see there. So we're going to be busy. We've got money and we're going to be busy. Okay. And we're going to use for the money that came into we call it the plus up money, that goes into the regular grants that DOT already manages. You know this system very well. It's the tip and the stip, traditional programming. Make sure that your projects are in that queue. But remember, we're going to move up stuff from 23 and 24 and 25. Maybe it wasn't funded. Now you'll see that it'll get funded a lot quicker. So if you're in that line, that's going to be good for you. Okay. Do the MPO. Okay, this is kind of cool. These are some of the new programs that are out there for Connecticut. I mentioned the bridge program, $561 million. I mentioned, and that's above and beyond the local bridge improvement program. I've used that many times in Danbury, so I know how that works. $52 million for EV charging stations, $80 million for carbon reduction, $90 million to protect our transportation assets so they can rebound after storms or natural disasters. There's a lot of money in there, folks, and those are all new programs that we never had before. Okay. And these are discretionary federal programs. Some of these are competitive. Some of them are up to us to make the best argument. One thing, whether you're interested or not, is the Northeast Corridor train grants. That's $30 billion. That's just for New York up to Maine. And we know we're going to get a big piece of that. Commissioner Giletti is an outstanding commissioner of DOT. He knows everything there is to know about trains. And and I know that Connecticut is a choke point from that trip up the Northeast Corridor. So that will score very well. Highways and roads, national competitive grant, $6 billion all in. That's $5 billion and then 500, 500. But there's $5 billion there for local governments. That's you. To improve safety and reduce crashes in local communities. So let's say you got an intersection that you get an accident, every 10 minutes. I had those in Danbury. You may look to that area as being a good candidate for this grant. So we're working on a process to help you do that. But that would be a great grant program for you to apply and try to get some money, even if you got half the money or 40% of the money. That may get you to completion of the project. There's smart grants in there for innovative transportation technologies so that you can use data, phasing of lights, things like that. And then reconnected community grants for planning, design, demolition of those communities that have been split down the middle by highways or train tracks or things like that. There's also, on top of the money coming to Connecticut for bridges, there's a new federal national grant program of $9.2 billion that'll supplement our 561 formula funding. And then there's other grants you see in there. Nobody, by the way, for a chuckle, can tell me what is the mega project grant or what it's used for, except it's multimodal, multi-jurisdictional, but nobody really understands. I think that's a wrap for somebody somewhere in the United States of America that wants $5 billion, but that's just me. Okay, next slide. And then these are more discretionary programs that are national in nature, but Connecticut will be applying for them. Capital investment grants, low or no emission bus grants. I like this one on the bottom because there's always been a problem in Danbury, is the culvert grants, where if you've got an area that habitually floods all the time and you got to remove, replace, and restore the culverts, you just don't have the money to do it. That is a great grant opportunity for you to apply for. And again, 80-20 split, you can take a lot of the costs out and finally get some of that stuff that you wanted to get done. So that's roughly over $100 billion in transportation grants over the next 5 years for us to pursue. Okay, are there any barriers for us to doing this? Well, I mentioned yesterday, was that costs on Wednesday? Yeah, was that yesterday? I think it was yesterday. That's how the time goes. I mentioned that our biggest challenge at DOT is recruiting and keeping engineers. So right now, to do the IIJA, we need 206 additional positions, right? The feds do pick up the cost of these at 80-20, but we also have to pick up all the people that are taking advantage of the retirement cliff that hits on June 30. So when you add those in, it's over 400 positions that we need to find. Considering that Connecticut only produces 200 engineers a year, and you all are competing for them, and private agencies and businesses are competing for them, it is going to be a difficult challenge, but something we think we can do. And DOT is also establishing a grants and socioeconomic unit. That's to help you, particularly small towns and medium-sized towns and cities, figure out what the equity analysis is, how to set up the resilience in the grant application, to do a lot of that work for you and to work as your strategic partner in getting this stuff approved. Okay. Okay, DEEP. I'm going to go quickly through DEEP because it's a lot, but it's all important. I'm not minimizing it in any way, shape, or form. And we've got a great commissioner, Commissioner Dykes, and she also can help you with this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her, as well as DOT. Clean School Bus Program. That's a new $5 billion nationwide program for clean school buses. $2 billion for electric, and then the balance of Danbury, we flipped over to propane. It's worked out really well. And no, wait, propane or natural gas? Propane. And it's worked out pretty well. So those are some of the things that you can do to have clean transportation alternatives for the kids. Okay. Big issue is clean energy and grid resilience. You'll see a couple of slides on this that are important. We know, and you know, and I know that when somebody loses their power, they lose their mind. Now, normally for the first couple of days, it's like a camp out, so they're in pretty good shape. But by day 3 or 4, they're at your town hall with their pitchforks and their torches, and they're going to kill you. So this is a very good way to stand up our grid and get it back in line faster. And that could be through undergrounding, pole management, microgrid, storage, hardening sites, vegetation, tree clearing, things like that. Significant amount of money available and a competitive formula for us to apply for that. I've always been of the opinion, I said this yesterday, that we don't own the grid, but yet we all use it. So I have reservations about using money in a privately owned, for a privately owned business. But on the other hand, the fact of the matter is you got to keep the lights on. So that's what this does. Smart grid investment, transmission facilitation. Also, there's money in there for $6 billion for a new civil nuclear credit program. This is going to help Millstone out, which we're already working on the application for that. Hydropower and clean hydrogen as well. Next. Clean energy, grid resilience, more of this. Look at all this stuff. State energy program. That's the, they added $6.8 million, $6.88 million to our $770 million annually, nationally. They will promote energy, security, efficiency, state-led energy initiatives. I like this one because it serves residents. This is where they come in and they will do the audit of the house or the business and tell you how to, make it more efficient. And then there's more money that we've added to the weatherization program, so they can actually apply for a grant to replace the windows and things like that. And on the bottom thing, you'll see there's more money for training people to become energy auditors, because we need people to go out there, as well as work with building code officials, and we'll offer training for that through DEEP, to be able to keep our grid lit up better, quicker, and reduce cost of electricity. Okay. Clean Water and Revolving Loan Fund. Many of you use the Clean Water Fund. So you're familiar with how it works. That helps with wastewater infrastructure. Regional plants, anything that's done on a regional basis will be looked on and much easier for us to fund. So think about that as you begin looking at these problems. PFAS is a big issue throughout the state, which is an emerging contaminants program. There's a wastewater efficiency grant program, sewer overflow, clean water resiliency. There is a Long Island Sound study and more money for brownfields, which is a big deal in some of our mid-sized cities. Okay. Broadband, you may be poorly served with high-speed internet. So this will provide a broadband equity access and deployment program, $100 million minimum allocation to each state. And again, we put in money already for this. We've hired a broadband czar that's going to start working on this. Really cool project. Broadband is much like sewer and water. It's a utility now. You need it. A lot of your residents are working from home or working in a hybrid deal. You don't like it, but sometimes kids get sent home. They've got to use the computer, but also, schools need broadband in their libraries and in their tech centers. So that's also really important. There's a rural e-connectivity broadband pilot as well. And that's a grant that you can apply for. And many of you may qualify for that because, like anything else, these companies, Comcast, Frontier, they put their broadband where there are customers. And if there are not a lot of people living in that area, then they won't wire it up with fiber or whatever. So we have money now to help do that. Okay. Community resilience. We have coast money, which is not a big issue for you all. We do have a dam safety grant. We have a Storm Act to help provide you a revolving loan where you can borrow money to help fix areas in your community that may have climate issues. Maybe they flood more. The 100-year storm is now every 10 years. That you should look to those kinds of things and see if you can find candidates for this kind of issue. Also, wildlife risk reduction, as well as U.S. Army Corps coastal inland flood risk. So there's $50 million going to the U.S. Army Corps to do a lot of these flood projects, which is pretty cool. Okay, what's DEEP's problem? Similar to DOT, great commissioners, great senior staff, but we need people, right? So we need 70 plus additional full-time. We're working on moving the 40-hour people, 35-hour engineers to 40 hours. It's been an issue. DEEP will braid money together by looking at a lot of these different grants that are out there that are already on the books. They're going to reach out to you on their own as well as through me. And they have just set up a equity and environmental justice committee internally to review some of these programs. So we need staff just like you all do. It's a funny time out there. Used to be people fight for state jobs, not so much anymore. They probably don't fight for municipal jobs either, but it is what it is. And I think the next slide is Q&A. So here's what I'm going to put out to you today. If you watched all this and said, okay, what are we supposed to do? Go talk to your town engineer, talk to your town planner, pull those old dusty plans that people have talked about for decades off the shelf, clean them up, update them, get them ready, and they will be strong candidates for funding under this program. The legislature is also thinking about somehow riding on top of us and deploying these resources. That's certainly their prerogative, the legislative prerogative. It is a challenge, though, for them because this is driven by federal rules. And we know under the supremacy clause, the federal government trumps the state government. So the federal rules won't prohibit, and the state cannot prohibit you in your community from applying for a federal grant and determining it. We don't want it to come to that. We all got to work if we're going to maximize and get the right amount of money for everybody and what we deserve here in Connecticut. We've all got to be on the same page. So we're working cooperatively with our legislative body as well as our federal congressional staff. With that, I'll throw it open to any questions anybody might have.
Any questions from the group?
I have a question. This is Denise from Litchfield. Hi, Mark. I think you're friends with my sister-in-law, Trisha Blood, maybe. I think you
Yes.
married them actually, which is great.
Yes.
Yes, Trisha
Small
Rachel.
world.
So my question is, these grants will be available, but they're not available yet.
That's right. That's right.
And
We're in
where will
that.
people go? Where will towns go to find the actual grant applications, and how will we be informed about when they're going to be available?
So we're waiting for the guidance to come out from a lot of these various grants that we showed. And the Fed said over the next year, they'll be dropping guidance. We are going to be the repository of all this guidance. So if you get a project or program, here's what I think you should do. Write it down. Contact your COG. Send in a narrative to Rob, and he'll keep them. And I'm asking all the COG EDs to keep these proposals and thoughts. And as the guidance drops out, we're going to try to meet with the COGs once a month with the EDs and say, okay, who's got an intersection? Who has this? Who has that? And then help format that so you're not left alone trying to write this grant and figure it out. It's way too complicated, I think, for one person to do it. So many hands that we have in it to help you get these resources for your community, I think is better. If I were in Litchfield, I would want that help.
All right, thank you. Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Commissioner Mark, Dan Jerem here. How are you?
New Hartford in the house.
Yeah, nice to see you. You know, I took a lot of notes and I was going through, you know, one of the things that we struggle with is, you know, we're going to be to get something, you know, in the pipeline, we're going to have to expend some engineering funds, like you're saying, you know, some of the smaller towns, we don't have plans that are not, you know, sitting on the shelf because it's kind of hard to allocate those engineering dollars. Are we going to get any help with screening from, you know, your task force or your group to say, hey, look, this is really something viable you should be pursuing or not? Because, you know, it's just so hard. Like you say, there's such a labor shortage and engineering dollars are getting jacked up here that, you know, I wrote the road improvements, the accident reduction, the culverts, all seem like great ideas. The vegetation management with these ash trees, you know, if Rob's going to be doing some screening of these things, just so that we get some help before we start laying out some money, you know, that, you know, something, you know, should these accident reduction things be in the regional transportation safety plan to get merit, you know, are we going to be able to get a little guidance on the viability of these projects before we start laying out some engineering dollars, or is that we're going to have to lean on Rob here?
No, that's a great point, Dan. So a couple of things come to mind. One is I am working with the COGS executive board to develop a system and process. We are going to loop in DOT because they have the infrastructure, the manpower, the horsepower to be able to review this stuff for you and to help. But I think the COGS and DOT or DEEP, depending on where this project lands, you know, whatever it might be, will be invaluable to us. And then in the end, it'll loop back around to you. So basically, the vision is, this is just a vision, and I got to get the legislature to agree to this, is that Dan Jerem's got a project in New Hartford, you know, intersection he wants to get done. So you write a narrative up. You don't have to write War and Peace, just a narrative. You'll bring it to Rob. Rob, some of our COGs are very well staffed, but some of them need help in terms of engineering as well, right? Some are big and some are really small. It depends on the area. So we've got to figure out a way to get that intersection engineered and looked at. We'll kick it to DOT to get their sign up and say, hey, this is a great idea. It's a local road. It's not our road, but we know it leads to accidents. We reviewed the traffic data that, you know, Public Works has put out or whatever, or the police. And we think it's good. You know, you're good to go. So then that idea or grant application will circle back to you. We'll sign off on it. You're going to give it to Rob. And then we're going to have a system for sending these in with a letter from the state on top, from me, saying, look, we think this is a great idea and we'd like your consideration. Plus, your congressional delegation needs a copy of that. So we'll shuttle that out to both of our U.S. senators and your congressperson. So everybody's in a loop. And then I would recommend you follow up with the congressperson just to tickle them and let them know that you've got something in. That's the big picture. But here's the problem is that if other organizations try to direct this money, it's going to be a challenge for us because, you know, the worst cases, and I'm particularly sensitive because I have so many friends that lead these small towns, beautiful places, but they don't have the horsepower. You know, I was lucky in Danbury. I had 3 engineers, I had city planners and all kinds of stuff. You just don't have that. So we got to figure out a way to get those assets to help you put this together. And I think we're honing on something. I have to say Rob's counterparts have been great. Rob's been great. we're going to get there for you. But I really want to use the COGs. I think the COGs are it. You know, everybody's comfortable, particularly for regional projects too. You all know each other up there. I loved my COG. I used to go to the meeting just because it was a good break from getting yelled at all day in City Hall. So I don't know. I think I think those are the areas where we can really develop a strong system.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, real quick from a COG standpoint, Mark, I know probably hasn't come up, but the structure behind LOTSIP has been pretty successful for as I understand with other COGs, especially here in Northwest Hills. You know, as far as administrating that process. So if anything set up remotely close to that, it certainly would be beneficial here.
Yeah, we're grinding it out right now, Rob. In fact, Matt just sent me something I got to look at after I hang up here. But I want to use the COGs because I had such a great experience with Francis and our COG. You know, Francis is a rail guy. He knows rail like this. It's crazy how much rail he knows. But my point is that you felt better going there where people understood your problem and tried to help you out. And even when we were just HEVCO years ago, Dave used to, and John Chu were great at doing this stuff. So I think that's the place to be. I just got to convince the legislature that they're not losing anything here. They're part of this discussion. We want them involved, but you can't get in the way and putting in another layer, because then we're not going to maximize this program. Sorry.
Mark, can I ask you one more question? The further
Sure.
down on our agenda is Tom Kirk from Mira. And that's one of the things that a lot of the small towns are struggling with is our trash removal and that trash to energy plant. I know you've heard about it. You know, when we talk about regional projects, do you think that this is something that maybe gets on the radar? Something, because we're all wondering where this is going to go when, you know, Tom and Mira hits that end of that contract in a few years here, and we're all going to be fighting with each other about where we're going to take our trash. You know, there's got to be 50 towns, you know, in Mira, you know, New Hartford being one of it with RRDD, Barkhamsted and Winstead. But you know, it's starting to move to the front burner of an issue, you know, because it's kind of been hanging in the wind here for a while, and we knew that issues were coming, and they need some money there to find a solution. So
yeah, I did speak to the governor directly about that issue. He's aware of it too. You know, I've been through every one of these grant things. I think I can hook something in there for the national grants. But we are on a time, you know, we got a time constraint here too, which I don't know if they're going to match up, but it's an issue. I talk to the governor once a week about that. Unfortunately, you know, I served on a trash. We have a local trash regional approach as well in the Danbury area. So I know way too much about it. It's painful, but it's necessary, right? You know,
right.
These transfer stations are critical, and the fact that they shut yours down, and, you know, in the long term, it's going to be a problem. You got to know where to put your trash. So he knows it. I've got another meeting with him coming up. I don't have an answer for you on it yet, but it's on our radar big time.
Well, as long as it's in the conversation, I'm happy, you know, just to keep it in front center. And
Yes.
hopefully we'll find a solution soon.
Someday when I'm in New Hartford, we'll have a discussion about the turnaround on trash going from, burn plants to shipping it on rail out of state. And because initially that was like a major no-no, and now that's the answer for everything. But we'll
Right.
talk about that at another time. And that leads me to say, anybody out there, I know I'm on Mike's radar. Anybody who wants me to come up, sometimes you have to see a project to really understand it. You know, if you want me to come up, I'm happy to do that and visit and, you know, spend a couple hours looking at what you're talking about. And sometimes it helps make that argument, particularly when we're putting together the paperwork for this. I can say, oh, I saw that. That's terrible. We got to fix that. So feel free. You guys all know how to get a hold of me. My cell phone number is on every bathroom in Connecticut. So just enjoy.
All right.
Thank you. I think you might want to stick around for 10 minutes to listen to the next discussion. Having to do with broadband. And if I could open that up a little bit. I'm joined here by Wayne Heilman, who is the chairman of the Northwest Connect Board, which is trying to help set up a regional broadband solution for the northwest corner of Connecticut. I think that over the last 2 years, two things have been increasingly apparent to all of us. Broadband, and I'm talking specifically about fiber optic cable, is going to be increasingly necessary to fully utilize the internet. And internet usage during the pandemic has risen at a meteoric rate. And I also think that any plan that places fiber in our towns is going to require a public-private partnership. Each town going it alone is not going to be the answer to solving our problem. If you accept these two statements, which I think are indisputable, we have to understand that engaging in such a partnership requires a certain critical mass and the number of homes passed to interest a private partner. Without such an interest, we won't have any fiber infrastructure in our area for at least a decade. It just does not pay for a current provider in our area to upgrade to fiber, given the low number of homes per square mile. So what I am proposing is that those towns who do not have Optimum, you lucky people, join together in a very informal coalition to jointly view our local town efforts as part of a bigger whole. Eventually, this will lead to a more formal manner of joining together. At this point, however, we just need to understand the necessity of mass in negotiating with potential private providers. It is the intent of this to gather as many towns as possible to begin this, and we will certainly expand beyond the geographic area of the Northwest COG covered by our current member towns in getting true fiber optic to our residents. As many of you know, as I said, I'm a member of the COG, Northwest Connecticut Board, and I would like to introduce you to Mike Heilman, Chairman of the Northwest Connecticut Board, to add a few comments and open it up to questions. We are not asking for an ironclad commitment, just a verbal agreement that you're willing to work together. Wayne, why don't you add to what I've said?
Great. Well, thanks, Henry. As Henry so eloquently stated, I'm Wayne Heilman. I'm the board chair of Northwest Connect. As many of you know, we have been working on this issue for years in the Northwest Hills, with our ultimate goal being to enable a universal fiber to the home network for the Litchfield Hills. We have been engaged in many strategies over the years with the ultimate goal of how we have thought, as Henry said, this to be ultimately a public-private partnership. We to attract a conventional internet provider who's just basically going to build out the type of system we need. We simply don't have enough people. We simply don't have enough homes. It's going to take some sort of partnership. I'm going to cut right to the chase here in the interest of time. And the reason I am here today is I wanted to inform the members of the COG that, in fact, we have made some at least nominal progress to the point where we'd like to present to you. In short, Northwest Connect has been approached by Google Fiber with an interest in building out and operating a universal fiber. Now, of course, it's going to be more complicated than that, but I'm going to mute my video here because I'm getting a signal that, wouldn't you know it, my internet is dying on me here. My Zoom is not working so well, so I'm hoping that you can still all hear me even without my video. In short, Google is interested in partnering with our communities in offering universal gigabit symmetric fiber to our citizens through their Google Fiber program. I'm sure all of you are, and if you're not familiar with Google Fiber, they are universally regarded as probably the best internet service provider in the United States, perhaps the world. They approached us. They have seen the legwork and the groundwork that has been laid here in the Northwest Hills by Northwest Connect, and they think that we may be able to serve as a suitable partner for their next ventures in terms of broadening their level of support in fiber optic gigabit internet throughout the United States. What I'm asking for all of you today is essentially for a conversation. This is going to take some effort on our part. For one, being that Google is not really interested in striking individual deals with individual small towns. They want a regional entity of some sort that they can work out an arrangement with. And that's going to take some effort on our part. As you all know, we don't have county government. We don't really have a regional entity that can act on this behalf. And we're going to have to think about how we could do that. So what I'm asking for all of you today is I'll be in contact with those of you who are interested. And we basically want to have a conversation. I want to have one member from each town sit down with me. I'd like to spell out the different options that may be available to us. I'd like to share with you the work that Northwest Connect has done on this initiative to this point. And I'd like to see if perhaps we can crowdsource this initiative and come to some sort of arrangement where we might be able to enter into a partnership with Google. In the interest of time, that's it. That's my ask. And I'm going to open it to any questions that people may have in general terms. And I promise to try to make my answers as user-friendly and tech unsavvy as possible.
Any questions from any of the people in the area, that especially those that are not lucky enough to have Optimum or some other provider in their town?
Well, just on the broad statement, what's not to like about that presentation? I mean, I know it's short and sweet and to the point, but all the small towns struggle with, when you talk about the broadband venture, how the heck are you going to pull that off? How are you going to do it? So to have Google of all, organizations confront us, why would we ever say no to exploring a conversation with them that doesn't seem to have a financial commitment? I mean, to me, to see if we could do something with, one of the largest firms on the planet would seem to be a no-brainer.
Well, I agree with you, hence the reason that we're having this conversation today. I also think that with the assistance of the state and with the assistance of somebody like Google, if we can put together a large enough correlation group of communities that are interested in this, and it's going to be a large number of homes. They're not interested in covering 3,000 homes. They want something much bigger than that. And but they do not have a real geographic footprint in the state of Connecticut. I think that they would like one, and they're serious people. This is not a fly-by-night outfit.
Why doesn't Henry, excuse me, it's Mike Chris from Town Harrington. Why doesn't Wayne provide his email address, or maybe through Rob can send it out with some contact information? Those towns that are not in the Optimum area can reach out to Wayne and set those meetings up directly rather than, trying to do it through the meeting here.
I unequivocally agree. I will, Wayne, why don't you just give your contact points if you're willing to do so?
I am absolutely willing. So look, here's what I'll do. I'll put my email address in the chat, and anybody who is interested in contacting me about this endeavor, feel free to reach out, and I will, once I get a critical mass of people, I will do a Google Doodle or whatever is necessary, and we will set up some sort of meeting and where we can have an initial conversation. This is going to involve some cooperation amongst the different communities. It could be as simple as an interlocal agreement. It could be as complicated as an inter-town district. There are options that we can pursue that do not require intervention by the state legislature. There are existing laws already on the books that allow us to do this. So I would just like to have a conversation with all of you who are interested to see what your thoughts are on this. Again, this is just a first step. There's no financial commitment required. There is, there's no blood oath required. We just want to talk.
Yeah, Wayne, Rob Phillips, NHCOG, can you just send me a follow-up email with your contact, and I'll be sure to send it out. I don't think we have everybody represented from the region here today anyway.
No problem.
Thank you.
And if there are any other kind of basic questions, I think Henry made a good point. I would like to emphasize that Google approached us. So if they think we might be ripe for this sort of thing, it's reasonable to assume that maybe there are other providers out there who think we may be ready for this as well. So this conversation, this concept that Henry put forward of us having to kind of work together and row in the same direction is going to apply whether it's Google or whether it's someone else. So this, we have all talked about, we want this to happen. At a certain point, we all need to get in the boat together, and this has showed Northwest Connect that it's time to get the boat ready, folks. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out.
Hey, Robert, Todd Curicello here from Goshen. Mark McCarthy is trying to get in. Mark, the Board of Selectmen here in Goshen developed a broadband advisory committee, and Mark McCarthy is my chairperson. And he is working very, very hard. I don't know, Wayne, if he has contacted you, but Mark is trying to get on the line right now. And hopefully if he gets on, he could tell us what he is doing for Goshen and our surrounding towns.
I think that we should leave those individual conversations to a separate point in time. I don't think that we have time here today to do that. Unless
Goshen might be served by Optimum also.
Pardon?
Mhm.
It is, yeah. So
It
we're
is.
being covered by Optimum,
All
Todd.
right.
We're part of that group.
Hey, those of you served by Optimum, if you want to poke your head in and have this conversation with us, you're welcome. At this point, we're just having a conversation, and I don't think that any of our communities should be limiting any of our options at this point. But in terms of the specifics, I agree with Henry. I think we should leave it until we have our first sit down. I just wanted to let you all know that that this is happening and that we want to move forward. And I think you all would agree that we would want to move forward with this as well.
So I think this kind of dovetails with Mark's presentation. But I think we should move on now. We're keeping Betsy Guerra waiting, and if we can, Betsy, are you on the here right now?
I am. There I am. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll be brief. I know you've got a busy day and we're still wading through voluminous budget documents and agency legislative packages. So as you know, the governor announced his proposed budget yesterday. It includes $2.85 billion in statutory formula grants, and that includes a $40 million increase in education cost sharing formula funding. It does maintain level funding for Town Aid Road, lot SIP, low SIP, local bridge programs and so forth. And those programs will be, as you know, and enhanced by the federal infrastructure funding, as Mark has pointed out. So we're waiting, as Mark mentioned, for that money to be appropriate on the federal level and to kind of see how towns can access that. And I know both CCM and COST will be providing information to towns to make sure that they're staying on top of that and that they can move ahead with shovel-ready projects. One of the things also at Cost Town meeting on Tuesday, Garrett Eucalito from the Department of Transportation mentioned that there will be a special program for rural roads and bridges. So we're waiting for more information on that. I think he might have mentioned that here at this COG a few months ago, but we're following up with him on that. COST is also pursuing changes to the Small Town Economic Assistance Program. Last year, the Office of Policy and Management ended up imposing a cap on the grants that ended up that each town would receive about $120,000 plus rather than up to $500,000 in grants, which was how the program was initially designed. It also imposed a matching requirement with very little flexibility. So we are trying to address that. You did mention broadband. There is money in the governor's budget to support broadband as well as in the federal infrastructure funding. And there is discussion in the budget document about using the existing Connecticut education network as a middle mile to better address the needs of unserved and underserved areas. So we'll be talking more about that. I'll be curious to find out how your group feels about that and whether that will be of any assistance in addressing your particular issue. The budget also includes funding to address indoor air quality issues that many school facilities are facing, upgrades to HVAC systems and so forth, which has been underscored due to the ongoing pandemic. So we're very happy to see that. That was one of our top legislative priorities, as is the broadband issue. Solid waste management, as you know, is a huge issue for towns, particularly because of the impending closure of MIRA. The Department of Energy and Environmental Protection has released its agency legislative package, and it talks about using some funding to assist towns in implementing pay-as-you-throw programs or organics collection, extended producer responsibility programs to help reduce the amount of waste that needs to be disposed. They did mention the fact that they anticipate that MIRA will be closing in the spring of 2022. And unfortunately, at our town meeting, Governor Lamont did mention that to upgrade the facility at this point would cost $400 million, and he did not see that as something in Connecticut's future because in part of environmental justice concerns and the fact that they just don't want to see that facility in Hartford. So we do have a meeting. Don Stein and I will be meeting with the chairs of the Environment Committee and the ranking members of the Environment Committee to discuss this further. We'd had a meeting last week and touched on it a little bit, and Don was participating in that. So we don't know whether the legislature may provide some help. You know, I think as Don has pointed out on numerous occasions, all of these efforts are good. They're something that municipalities support in order to reduce waste, but at the same time, we just don't have any viable solution now to replace the activities that MIRA provides to municipalities. So it's a big issue, and we'll have more to discuss that. I will mention that Speaker Ritter, as part of our legislative forum, did talk about the pay-as-you-throw or the unit-based pricing program and indicated that last year they discussed this in their caucus as far as mandating that towns move ahead with pay-as-you-throw. And there was very little support in their caucus for that. So we don't anticipate seeing that. That is something that COST has supported as part of its legislative platform. But again, I just don't see that there's a lot of support for that in the legislature. There was also in the governor's budget a lot of focus on juvenile crime, opioid abuse, mental health concerns facing children. There will be $160 million more for behavioral health services in the budget. There was also a lot of discussion at our legislative forum on special education funding and ways to assist towns in addressing what can be very unpredictable costs, particularly for small towns where you get one or two individuals in there that need very special facilities, and it just throws your budget completely out of whack. Concern we do have with the governor's budget proposal, we are welcome to discussing this further with him, is the issue of the car tax. So there is a proposal that would impose a 29 mill rate cap on taxes on motor vehicles. There's also a separate proposal that would change the methodology for assessment, also move trucks to the personal property portion of the tax, and then change the way that the supplemental list is reported. So rather than doing it on an annual basis, they would do it on a monthly basis. Still trying to figure out how that would work, but a couple of our towns and finance directors have run the numbers. Governor Lamont was adamant that he wanted to make sure that towns were kept whole under the proposal. But even with that intention, when we ran the numbers, it doesn't look as though towns would be kept whole. Martin Heff from OPM did reach out to us. We're hoping to meet with him soon to have a discussion about the impact of this proposal. But we are trying to keep an open mind, but we are very concerned that it would end up, if they don't make towns whole, and it's not, there's no way to make sure that there's this fail-safe mechanism for protecting that reimbursement due to the municipalities, that we're going to end up being in a situation where lost revenues have to be shifted to homeowners and businesses, and that's just not going to be sustainable. So a lot of concerns there. There's also a proposal that DEEP has submitted to the Environment Committee that would prohibit or restrict the unintentional feeding of coyotes, foxes, bobcats, bears on private land. Currently, they have it on open space or state-owned land, rather, where there's a determination of a public safety threat. So that is something I know in this area is of particular concern. So I'd appreciate your thoughts on that. I will mention that, as you probably heard, this is a 12-week session. We're almost at the end of week one, and there's not a lot of time. They're already scheduling public hearings, believe it or not, although the agendas aren't out. And we do rely on people. And I know this region in particular has been wonderful about making sure that people weigh in on proposals. Cost is ready to assist you in drafting testimony, making sure that you are aware of the public hearings and available to testify. These will be done via Zoom, at least in the beginning of the session. It's actually a very easy way to testify. Most of the committees are allowing people to testify, municipal leaders to testify in the first hour if possible. So that makes it a little easier for you, but it is important in a virtual legislative setting that we make sure that our legislative delegations know where we are in terms of legislative priorities and what we support and what we oppose. So we will be calling at all of you to weigh in with your delegations on a regular basis.
Thank you. Any questions?
Answer questions. And if you don't have any here, feel free to call me anytime. bguerra@ctcost.org is my email.
That's Denise in Litchfield. I'm sorry. I just have a couple quick questions. That pay-as-you-throw initiative, did they get feedback of, did they oppose it because of the mandate? Because it's proven to work. I think Stonington's already has done it for years, and their garbage per person is half of what the average garbage is, you know, for the residents of the state of Connecticut. So I didn't know if there was any feedback on that. And then has been any consideration to support the expansion of other waste to energy plants that are also in Connecticut and providing financial assistance to those to expand their services?
There wasn't, just to your second question on trash to energy, there wasn't any discussion. I do know that Mayor Tom Dunn from Wolcott had asked a question of the governor about that and whether there would be some efforts to address it, but really wasn't any detailed response to that. It was kind of add on at the end of the governor's remarks. So it is an issue. And I think we need to make sure that people are aware that even though it's going to cost millions of dollars to upgrade these facilities, something has to be done, because we're not, even if we implement all of these programs, it's just not going to make a dent in the disposal of waste. I think they predicted I know Tom Kirk is on and going to be reporting later, but when Mira closes, it's 800 tons of waste, I believe. And so we need to figure out a way to address that. And to your first question.
Yeah, the pay as you throw.
Pay as you throw. So what they had discussed whether they should mandate that municipalities implement pay as you throw. And according to Speaker Ritter, the caucus wasn't comfortable doing that. They felt that they would encourage municipalities to do that, but they felt that municipalities weren't able to implement it on their own, that they did not want to mandate it for them. It was just a response to a question. So there wasn't a lot of discussion, but we can certainly follow up on that.
Michael, you had something? Mike?
Yeah, I think that we can all agree that one of the major downfalls of Mira was just the renewable energy reimbursement rate, which started the downfall years ago for Mira when the state stepped in and regulated that and prevented them from making any money to make any substantial investments in their facilities. So that's the beginning of the end of Mira at that point in time. Pay as you throw has not been a viable option, at least for any of the communities up here. We've tried it twice. Torrington's tried it twice. People came out in droves against it. And Betsy's right. Ritter had said it's not favorable even in the legislature, and whether it be Republican or Democratic legislator, it's not favorable. And Betsy, I just want to compliment you. Great small town meeting the other day, participating in that. And I think that we can all agree in the grand scheme of things, with a $90 billion looming debt for the state of Connecticut, them with their ability to make us whole is not really a trustworthy statement. And we proceed with tongue in cheek. I think it's a great gesture, and it's more of a hug and say, don't worry, we're going to make it all right. But the reality is there's towns that have already hit that motor vehicle cap at the current rate that have not been made whole in years past, and have struggled with dragging out that revenue reimbursement. I don't see how the state can make that sustainable. And I think it's something that all of us as small towns should be concerned about, because once you lower that to a 28, 29 mil, depending on what they're talking about, those are just some of the preliminary numbers that they tossed out. And I think that we all need to be concerned that it's definitely going to have an impact on all of our communities, because it's going to be very easy to hit those thresholds. And I think that we're going to have a real uphill battle here. And with it being a short session, I don't anticipate a lot of these things having legs. And Betsy, I don't know if you see that as well, but I think they are going to go after some of these big ticket items. The property tax cap, the motor vehicle thing seems to be hot topic and buzzwords used in multiple speeches over the last couple of days. And I think that it's almost, I think Candelora said it best yesterday or the other day at your meeting, was that DEP's had a handoff approach to the solid waste problem in Connecticut. They keep hanging their hat on digestive systems and these other pay-as-you-throw options and stuff that are not viable solutions for small communities to take on right now. And they really have not wanted to get into the conversation, but I think they're going to be thrust into the conversation as we proceed, not only through the short session, but in over the next year, as this continues to progress. So, and I don't know if you agree with that, Betsy, or not.
I do, Mike. And by the way, welcome formally to our board. You were elected at our annual meeting, and I know you were participating virtually, so hopefully there weren't any bumps with that. I know we had some technological issues early on. And we are going to be putting together a working group to discuss some of the property taxes before the General Assembly. one being the car tax. It wasn't too long ago that there were proposals to have car taxes paid to the state, and then the state would divvy them up based on a formula, which would actually end up redistributing a lot of that funding from some of our smaller towns to some of the urban areas. So it is something to be of concern, particularly during a virtual session when you don't have the opportunity to kind of have your what they say, your spidey sense on and see who's talking to who up at the Capitol and what might be happening. So we do plan on having Martin Heft and his team talk to us about the proposal, follow up with the governor's office. But yeah, it's hard to put a lot of faith in them safeguarding that money. So we will see about that. And certainly solid waste will continue to be a big issue. So
Well, as you know, I'm normally very quiet, Betsy. So, but if you need my help, I'll be more than happy to be there.
well, I hope so.
Well,
Betsy, Dan Jaron from New Hartford. I don't know. I'll give you some local feedback right now. You know, our mill rate is 30 and a auto tax cap at 29 gives me a 3% adjustment. There's only one problem with that. If everybody's reviewed their assessor's data and looked at those NADA books, all those used car values are surging and everybody's getting ready to get punched in the nose with a huge tax increase on their cars. My grand list for my cars is up 21.5%. Okay, so take off the 3 on the property tax cap and people are going to be ticked. It's just a car tax, a terrible tax. And, you know, this is a gift to the larger cities that have the mill rates at 60 and 70. And it really doesn't do a whole lot for the small towns that probably have an average of a mill rate around 30. So yeah, maybe you get a little, but with these surging car values, because you can't buy a new car because, you know, we got all this supply chain issues, it's not going to help a lot to, you know, the people that are living in the neighborhood. With regard to the trash, if you put in a pay as you throw, you might as well hire another DPW guy because you're going to be picking up stuff along the side of the road, because people aren't going to have it because they're already taxed to death. And then we get into the education and the ECS, you know, the 40 million increase. You know, towns like New Hartford have been flatlined on ECS for the better part of a decade. You know, our costs for the schools go up every year. So every year the state flatlines us. It's nice that they hold us harmless, but again, it's another tax increase because we all know the school boards need more money. Their costs rise. And that cycles back to the age old of what are we doing to pay down some of the pension debt so that we don't get hit in 2 or 3 years. They've got these huge surpluses at the state and a huge rainy day fund. They should be paying this stuff down so that in 2 or 3 years, they're not hitting the municipalities with another chunk. It's all in our audit every year now. They've kind of geared it into our system of how much that they're supposedly covering us for, but they should be paying off their liabilities and paying this down. And any help on special ed would be great. But, you know, the reason why they have these huge surpluses because they jacked us on all these taxes and fees over the last 3 years, more tax increases to every single taxpayer in the state. It's got to stop somewhere because, you know, everybody talks about property tax relief, but it never seems to come. So it starts with education and you know, that pension debt would be a huge help before they start spending on something else. And they've got all this federal money coming in. So maybe the time's come to pay some of that stuff down and take it out of our audit because they're negotiating it. They're responsible for it. And we don't want any part of the bill. We love our teachers and our bills, but we have no negotiating power on any of that teacher pension debt. And they got into the mess. They need to get themselves out. So
Yeah, agreed. And we actually did include a recommendation to use that surplus to pay down the unfunded pension liabilities to take the pressure away to shift those costs to towns. I do want to mention we have at 1 o'clock today a free webinar featuring Keith Thaniff from the Connecticut Mirror on breaking down the budget. So I've been kind of waiting for that to do our in detail analysis of the budget. So again, it's free. If you hadn't gotten the link, please let me know. I'll be happy to share it with you.
I'd love to have that sent out. And by the way, the bear thing, the nuisance feeding, good idea.
Great, good to hear.
Yep.
We do have a bear feeding ordinance in our town, just because we've got a lot of bears. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Betsy. Let's move on. I think our next is Catherine Iwad. And the Workforce Investment Board.
Yeah, Vice Chairman Todd, I did get a direct message. I believe they had to run to another meeting, so they requested that we move it to the March meeting, and I'll look at that agenda when we get there. But that's good news for us because it helps us get back onto track a little bit more.
Right, exactly. So then if skipping that, can I have Dan? Dan, would you come up about the heritage area?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for including me on today's agenda. I'll be brief. So yeah, today's notice is really about an update for the Western New England Greenway. That's a bikeway project that we've been working on for roughly 10 or 12 years now that connects Norwalk, Connecticut with the Canadian border. And so this road route, this road cycling route passes right through many of the towns represented here in the Northwest Hills COG. We had originally planned this as predominantly on-road cycling for long-distance riders. But since then, it's attracted not only long-distance riders, but also local riders and also a number of professional organized group tours. And so in case you've seen more cyclists riding through your towns recently, we hope that we can take some of the credit for increasing some of that low impact traffic, hopefully low impact for all of you. So anyway,
And I don't think we've seen any in the last couple of weeks for some reason. I don't know. Go ahead.
Those snow tires, you need snow tires for bikes. So the Western New England Greenway, one of the iterations of that is to achieve national designation through AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, and they designate long distance bike routes as U.S. bicycle routes. And we have the good fortune through the support of you, the municipalities that this route passes through, participated with Connecticut DOT to achieve U.S. Bicycle Route 7 designation for this bikeway. And it passes through the towns of, here locally, New Milford, Kent, Cornwall, Canaan, Falls Village, the real Canaan, briefly through North Canaan, and then through Salisbury, and then it exits into Massachusetts. So the Western New England Greenway is also known as U.S. Bicycle Route 7. And the big push that we're working on right now, we've developed brochures, we've developed digital wayfinding, so people can ride this with a downloaded digital map. We printed brochures. We have a website up at wmegreenway.org that you can download all this stuff from. But the latest program that we're embarking on is roadway directional signage. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to reach out to the first selectmen in the towns that are directly along the route. I've already spoken with Henry and with Gordon about this. We have federal funds to fabricate and purchase and deliver these roadway signs. These are standard MUTCD USBR 7 roadway signs, reflective 3M prismatic on 3-pound or 2-pound galvanized U channel. So it's all standard MUTCD, approved for highway use, municipal or state highway use. And so we have federal funds to pay for the design and delivery of all the route signs that we need for Connecticut at this point. We may ask the municipalities for some assistance in installation because that's a big chunk of this program, as well as getting the darn things in the ground. So, but I can discuss that individually with the municipalities that are directly impacted by it. So that it in a nutshell is it. I do have a picture of it. Robert, if you wanted to let me screen share, if that's even relevant, I can show you what these roadway signs look like. They are in use across the nation. As I said, it's MUTCD standard. Let's see if I can show you what this looks like here. And if you can all see that. You know, this is an example. It should have a second bolt at the bottom of each of these signs. I just threw this thing in the ground next to my garage last summer, so I didn't bother putting all the bolts in it. But this is the basic setup that we would deliver for each of the turns as it goes through your municipality. Generally speaking, we put a sign ahead of the turn northbound, at the turn north, or ahead of the turn northbound, and then following the turn, so that people, once they've made the right turn, can say, yes, I see the confirmation sign, I know I'm on the right route. Similarly, southbound, an arrow sign like you see here, southbound right before the turn, and then following the turn, a confirmation sign with an up arrow that says, yes, you've made the correct turn. So each intersection, each turn on the route will get 2 signs northbound, 2 signs southbound. And so that's what we're proposing. But anyway, that was it in a nutshell. We have a couple of things coming up. We know we have at least one more professional group tour that's going to be riding the route in June or July. A couple of the committee members, Dan McGinnis and Terry Burke, are on the call today as well. Don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add to what I said, but the big takeaway is, thank you for your your cooperation in achieving U.S. bicycle route designation with CONDOT, and we're next prepared to purchase signs for each municipality. So I'll reach out individually.
Thank you. If we can we just move right on to Tom Kirk, so we can keep this meeting, see if we can get it kind of back to schedule.
Thanks again for letting me
Thank
on
you,
your
Dan.
agenda today. Thanks.
Dan. Tom?
Good morning. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I'll try and be brief. I have a short PowerPoint I'd like to share with you. Let me get that ready for you right now. Share screen. Hopefully you can all see that. I appreciate your time this morning, and we'll be brief. You're all familiar with the background and what brings us here. It's frankly a 10-year failure of foresight, leadership, and management over the past decade. But nonetheless, we are where we are, and there's no short-term fix. I appreciate the interest and the comments and the thoughts about infrastructure development. Unfortunately, that's would have been great 8 or 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. We're kind of where we are now, and we have to start thinking about this in 2 distinct and discrete ways. One is, what do we do in the immediate future? And by that, I mean in the coming months. And then what can we do as a state to reclaim our rightful place as a progressive and environmentally focused community, managing our waste properly, supportive of public health and the environment. We did that for 35 years. We made a decision by default, frankly, to stop doing that a few years ago. The map in front of you is a color-coded map of the towns utilizing the existing South Meadows Trash-to-Energy facility and the transfer stations, satellite transfer stations associated with that. Most of you guys up here in the Northeast Hills are in the Brown area. The status of our situation today is a bit in flux. We are negotiating with the preferred vendor from our RFP process, recently completed We are focusing on a number of different options. The Torrington and Watertown transfer station patrons. If we're successful in negotiating an agreement there, we will be trucking that waste to a Western landfill in Pennsylvania. Our Essex transfer station patrons, we hope to truck that waste to an in-state trash to energy facility, a private facility owned by Covanta in Preston, Connecticut. And our Hartford patrons, those towns delivering directly to the South Meadows facility. If we're successful, we hope to be able to have a contract that will rail or truck that waste to an Ohio landfill via a private transfer station, which is located about 2 blocks from the Mira facility. There are significant hurdles to accomplishing this task of developing executable contracts. Top of the list is statutory and administrative restrictions built into our statutes for Mira as a public instrumentality. There are certain things that we must, for public benefit, insist on that are problematic for some of our bidders. Importantly, the volume of tonnage to be managed is important. We have the risk of municipalities opting out. Every municipality has the unilateral option to leave that agreement 30 days every year. If enough elect to do that, we will have many less tons to manage, and that will have impacts on pricing because the fixed cost would need to be spread over a smaller number of towns and tons. And by fixed cost, there is obviously the administrative cost, but there are also the fixed costs of transfer stations. Having a loader and a crew to staff a transfer station and move garbage out, those fixed costs are pretty much the same, whether there's 100 tons a day or 1,000 tons a day. So that's a concern. And we have a very significant issue with the financial treatment of hauler delivered waste to the Hartford facility, whether or not we can reach an agreement with the preferred vendor there on a flow control mechanism. It's critically important, both legally, from a contract standpoint with our municipalities, and from a financial standpoint, to ensure that Mira is the provider of privately hauled waste originating in our contract communities. So if we're unable to, we're in the midst of those negotiations now, and I don't want to try and handicap our chances here, but we are planning, as we should, for a failure to be able to tie those contracts up. Our backup plan, our default essentially, is challenging. Our options are very limited given the situation we're in. There are essentially 2 options, and that's to discard all or some of the proposals, essentially start over with all or some of the proposals, and continue to operate the plant at South Meadows for some period of time, perhaps as long as a year. That is a option fraught with risk for 2 reasons. You've heard from me in the past that we have very significant concerns about the capability of the hardware of the plant, the machines, the materials handling, boilers, turbines, etc. They are in desperate need of capital improvements, and continuing to operate them on a day-to-day basis is a hopeful enterprise. That has, frankly, up until recently, been what keeps me up at night. Unfortunately, what's keeping me up at night now is the risk of being able to maintain the personnel, the skilled personnel we require to operate the facility. We are struggling mightily with retaining and recruiting the highly skilled operators necessary to operate this modern plant. We are continuously operating in a shortfall situation, manpower wise. At some points, up to 50% of our required positions are vacant, and it's extraordinarily challenging to attract someone into this facility, given its long-term outlook. We are utilizing retention payments, bonuses, sign-on grants, etc., and continue to struggle. So what has eclipsed my concern over mechanical and electrical hardware risk affecting the ability to provide services is now a concern over our ability to be able to relieve the control room operator on duty. Just imagine the control room operator sitting in front of the computer, running the plant, having been there for 12 or 14 or 16 hours, and getting a call and saying his relief isn't showing up. That's a serious concern. I'm hoping we can avoid it, but it is eclipsing my concern over mechanical and electrical and hardware risk moving forward. Worst case scenario is we'll get to the point where we just can't staff the plant and we will be forced into a shutdown prior to having our plans in place and executable to transfer the waste out of state. An alternative to the second option available to us in the event we're unable to conclude deals with our preferred vendors would be to assign individual towns to alternative private disposal providers. We don't have the authority to do that now. Statutorily, that would be prohibited. So that option would be in the hands of the legislature. We don't think that's likely going to happen quickly, but it is an option that we would try and pursue if necessary. For this coming fiscal year, the board will meet in 2 weeks from yesterday to establish the tipping fee. Our recommendation, management's recommendation, will be a two-stage tipping fee, $116 for the towns with an amendment to their MSA executed. That amendment provides for a more reasonable opt-out trigger price closer to the operating tipping fee and a commitment within those opt-out restrictions of waste for a 5-year period. With no amendment, tipping fee would be $121. A little bit more about that amendment. Each of you has received a copy of it, an executable copy of it. The intent is to try and assure our potential contract partners that if they go out and buy trucks and trailers and spend a lot of money, that they can be assured of 5 years of business. To buy a fleet of trucks and trailers without that assurance, without knowing that, or without having to worry that towns will opt out next year because they think they can find a better deal, obviously that makes it pretty difficult to make the notes on your 5-year notes on trucks and trailers. So it's a very simple approach to try and assure our potential counterparties in those contractual arrangements that yes, we have 5 years worth of waste that you can count on to make your truck and trailer payments. I do want to reinforce that these prices are what management has recommended to the board. I've already heard some comments that perhaps 116 is a little high. We do have reserves available to adjust that price, and if the board so desires, they may lower that 116 to some more affordable number. But for preliminary purposes for the next 2 weeks, that's a good number to pencil into your budget estimations for the next fiscal year. All the prices are freight on board at Mira facilities in the Torrington, Watertown, Essex transfer stations or the Hartford facility. The prices are calculated to be net cost of service with some adjustment from prior year reserves. The single stream recycling fee will remain at zero cost recycling. And you should keep in mind that if you do look at options other than Mira, the value of free tipping recycling is very significant, depending on the value, the commodity value of the fibers and plastics, metals that are recovered in the single stream process. That could be worth up to as much as $14 in your tipping fee. So if we've got $116 tipping fee and commodity prices are in the tank as they have been for many years in the past few years, your actual MSW disposal cost, apples to apples, would be $102 per ton at Mira. So that's just something to keep in mind. At the moment, recycling commodities are doing very well, and recycling costs are very low relative to the past few years. It's a very volatile business, and we don't expect that to be long-term, but at the moment, recycling is doing great. Couple important dates to remember for all of you in the municipalities. The Mira board will establish its tipping fee, which we've recommended at $116 and $121 at their February general meeting on the 23rd. That's 2 weeks from yesterday. The opt-out window, the unilateral option for towns to exit the agreement, that window is open for 30 days following receipt of the fiscal year tipping fee. We typically notice the towns immediately following the meeting, so 30 days following the 23rd of February is likely the window of opportunity for towns to opt out of their contract with Mira. It's completely unilateral. You have freedom to do that. If you do so, you're free to take your waste wherever starting July 1st of this next fiscal year. We still hope to be able to secure the South Meadows Trash Energy combustion operations and recycling operations, I should say the combustion and the renewable energy operations, on or about July 1, 2022. That commissioning, decommissioning would start and would take about a year. The date of the actual last fire, if you will, when the combustion is secured permanently, is likely to be delayed, and primarily due to the anticipated delay in procuring trucks and trailers for the movement of waste west and south. The best information we have right now is it will be certainly weeks and probably months of additional combustion and renewable energy production at South Meadows as we await for delivery of those trucks and trailers and potentially rail cars. We don't expect any operational or financial impact to the towns in light of those potential delays, but the actual shutdown or securing of the plant will likely be delayed by some amount of time. To conclude here, it's not a surprise for you to hear from me. You've heard it many times. Connecticut's in a waste disposal crisis. We have been for quite a while. Refurbishment of the facility is frankly no longer viable. We've missed that window. The state declined to provide the capital to refurbish the facility. The private sector cannot do it because of an inadequate ROI. There was a comment made prior to the substantial reduction in electric revenues available to Mira and frankly any trash energy plant. And that absolutely is the base basic cause for, or the beginning of the basic cause for the breakdown of the business plan for terrestrial energy. From an environmental standpoint, terrestrial energy is still far and away the best way to deal with our waste. We've made a terrible decision to let our garbage go to a landfill instead of the much preferred terrestrial energy option. But it unfortunately is a decision that was made with our eyes wide open as a result of, well, because we just could not wrap our head around, our wallets around paying to fix this problem. And the problem is far from solved by sending it west. Disposal facilities across the state are closing. The Wallingford Resource Recovery Facility is already closed. Sterling has closed. The South Meadows facility will close shortly. The remaining facilities are old and in need of capital replacement. Their business issues are the same as Mira's, and they're struggling to be able to maintain their facilities. Of particular concern is our dependence on out-of-state landfill disposal capacity. Landfills are closing all across the Northeast. There are millions of tons of annual capacity that have disappeared in the last 8 years. And looking at the next 8 years, there are millions of additional tons of daily capacity that are being removed from our availability. That will impact our ability to be able to find places that will accept our waste. And it will, of course, impact the pricing. Recycling and waste reduction, pay to throw, EPR, organics diversion, all very beneficial projects. We would be horrifically naive at best to think that they can eliminate the need for large-scale disposal infrastructure in Connecticut. That is a foolish position. No serious person takes that position that we can fix our problem with pay to throw or extended producer responsibility or organics division. We will have millions of tons to deal with for the rest of our lives, short of a apocalypse. Not planning for that is unacceptable. Our plan to utilize out-of-state disposal is acceptable in the short term. We can and should do much better. And to that end, I think what's clearly warranted is a policy review and legislative action. Public investment policy for large-scale disposal infrastructure, I believe is an absolute necessity for Connecticut if we want to have control over our destiny with waste. Renewable energy credits use and value should be reassessed. The largest source of renewable energy in the state of Connecticut is trash to energy, and we do not reward it the way we do with less efficient, less reliable, and much more expensive wind, solar, and other renewables. Environmental and public health impact of our waste transportation policies, loading up hundreds of trucks a day to head west on overtaxed highways, bridges, road taxes, etc., is a questionably valid policy moving forward. We need to understand the value of waste management self-sufficiency. We've enjoyed it for 35 years. We're in the process of losing it now, and it's not a step in the right direction. And importantly, the value and focus of a public entity in waste policy implementation needs to be examined. MIRA was designed, authorized, and built for developing environmentally sound, large-scale, privately partnered trash to energy and disposal facilities, and did an extraordinarily good job. We have led the Western Hemisphere in waste management sustainability for 30 years. MIRA is not well designed, authorized. It is plainly not authorized or capable of building public entity waste facilities. We do not have a funding source, and the private sector is unable to supply that funding with a ROI that would be acceptable to them. So short of that return on investment, we will be moving our garbage west until it gets too expensive or too ugly. And hopefully that will prompt a serious and focused examination of solid waste policy moving forward. Right now, we're kind of hanging on by our fingernails and hoping for the best. We'll continue to provide net cost of service to the towns through 2027 to the extent we can. We have contracts with the towns. We're not allowed to go bankrupt. We're not authorized to do that. But our ability to be able to run the plant through 2027 is non-existent. Our ability to be able to work with private sectors is being tested today, but we recognize our responsibilities moving forward and do everything we can to ensure the towns have a place to bring their garbage after their residents drag it to the curb. All the towns continue to enjoy an option to exit at their discretion, with or without their agreement with the new MSA amendment. With that amendment, you're committing to the next 5 years. You still have an opt-out if prices go up just a few dollars above the 120 prices we're talking about today. We'll keep you appraised of our future disposal plans and developments. In the event the legislature does revisit this issue, we will, of course, reach out to you, the other COGs, in ensuring the General Assembly is informed and focused on the best path forward. It's a disturbing message I'm bringing to you today, kind of similar to what I've said in years past to you. This COG in particular has been very focused, very interested in this, and I appreciate that. We have frankly been very poorly served in the last 10 years, legislatively and executively. Making believe this problem doesn't exist is not a policy with the expectations of a good result. We really need to pay attention and come up with something better. For the short term, we can move our garbage west and south, and we should work diligently on reasonable and effective waste reduction strategies. But we should be realistic and opportunistic about our opportunities, about our plans moving forward, long term and in the immediate short term. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can expect a town meeting in early March to answer any of the questions regarding our budget and our plans for fiscal 2023. And we're always at your service. Don't hesitate to call me or any of the board members of MIRA with any questions.
Thank you.
That's a handful, sorry.
No problem. Are there any questions or comments from anybody? Okay, can we move on then to John Field?
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'll make it really brief, or I'll do my best to make it brief. Just a lot going on here. Today, we're having our final municipal pod when it comes to COVID. I'll cover COVID stuff first. We have our last municipal pod this morning, very small pod. There was only, I think, 8 or 9 folks picking up. We've had 8 total pods now since I think it's Christmas time, right around there. We've given out approximately 500,000 test kits and 500,000 masks here in Region 5 alone. So the plan going forward is we're looking at not having a municipal pod, but having a pod to address some of the school systems still are coming up short, some of the private and public schools. So there's a plan going on now, or there's a planning process in currently happening to talk about how we're going to do that. So you'll probably be hearing more on that. There's also continued distribution in regards to test kits to our long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities, childcare facilities, trying to cover the gamut, making sure that a lot of our nonprofit organizations are not missed also. Also, long-term recovery. We had a long-term recovery steering committee meeting yesterday. FEMA has started to reach out to some of those towns that had submitted projects for long-term recovery. So they're starting to do that. I know Torrington up here in Region 5, they reached out to them, and there's a meeting next week, or maybe it's even this week, I'm not sure. Then the governor's executive orders, obviously, that's at the top of the agenda list for legislation to see if he gets an extension on some of his executive orders. I don't think he's looking to have them all extended, but at least getting some of those. And most of you have heard about the school mask mandates, going away at the end of the month. Or I shouldn't say they're going away. They're more being put into the superintendent or lead person for the school systems to make decisions accordingly. So that's all the COVID stuff. Normal operations, we're trying to put together a school safety and security working group. You saw some information went out yesterday requesting who your security and safety person is for your school system. So we're trying to put a working group together. Basically, that group is actually going to try to network. It's more building a network so they can share some of their ideas in regards to what they're doing to make their schools safer, and the school planning process and all that kind of stuff. So just trying to build another network so these people can share with each other best practices and stuff like that. Demis is still looking to hire some people. We haven't had any new hires in the last couple of weeks, I'll call it. So we're in the process. We do have some shortages of staff. They're in the process of trying to divvy up some of those responsibilities, especially with the grants unit. We just lost another person in grants. So just bear with us, I say, for your grants. We're trying to meet all the deadlines, meet all the responsibilities there, but we're trying to divide that up because there's a lot going on in those particular group. The other thing is the cybersecurity working group continues to work on a toolkit for the towns. That I would imagine will come out very soon. And at the same time, if you haven't heard, you probably will hear in the near future, they're putting together a CEO training presentation for the end of March, and the ESF 7 group's working on that, and it's really going to be focusing on cybersecurity. So I think that's all I have for right now, sir. So unless there's any questions, obviously.
Any questions? Michael, can we move on to you?
Yeah, I'll try to do it as quick as possible. I know we're out of time here. So just really quick, the legislative committee did meet. We're in the process. I got the minutes and I looked through them, but I got to craft a legislative priority list around it. Unfortunately, I got them a little late, so I didn't get a chance to get that done, but I've got a short draft done. What I would like the COG members, if it's okay, if we have I don't know if we need a motion for it or not, but I'd like to send the legislative priorities list out in a draft form and then do a survey vote on that by each town through a survey vote on that and review or thoughts. I'll send it out as a draft and field any comments or questions, clean it up, send off a final draft to everybody, and then we can review it and vote on it so we can get it done as soon as possible. With this being a short session, we really can't wait till the next meeting to vote on it, unfortunately. So this is the first year I'm drafting it, and so I'm drafting it with the usually we just put the ideas together and it gets drafted up, but with the shortage of staff at the council at the COG office, my assistant and I are drafting it this year and putting together all the thoughts and processes from the committee meeting. What I will tell you is that the biggest things that we need to focus on, obviously, Mira. We had a large presentation today from Mira. I would suggest that in the future we have a separate meeting, just Mira would be great, because it is a big topic. It's something we need to focus on. It's something we need to talk about. And 15 minutes at a COG meeting or 20 minutes, half an hour at a COG meeting is not enough time to talk about all the different trash issues we've got, questions and concerns. So that's one of our number one priorities on the legislative agenda. We also continued with partnering with communities to control taxes. As you know, earlier in today's meeting, I talked a little bit about with Betsy We've addressed, motor vehicle is going to be a tax issue, property cap tax issue, all these different things that we were concerned about going forward are going to be on the legislative agenda list as far as helping to work with us to control taxes and make Connecticut and our small towns affordable, especially just emerging from this COVID pandemic and everything else. We need to work together, and we stress that in our legislative priority list that we need to work together in order to promote virtual hybrid town meeting options for other towns, make that more of a permanent option rather than an executive order. Looking at different ways for touching base on the higher prevailing wage thresholds, sponsoring legislation that would allow towns at local options to adopt biannual budgets, working with special education funding, increasing that percentage to 80% and actually funding it at 80 rather than budgeting for 75 and only funding at 65, 68% in some of the towns. Also reestablishing and revisiting the ECS funding formula to ensure that the small towns and rural communities are not being left out of the actual funding of ECS. As we talk about controlling costs at a local level and being reliant on property tax, what helps relieve some of the pressure on those property taxes is school systems, which are more than 70% in some towns of our actual budgets. So if we can get some assistance with the state in reinvesting in education in our rural communities, we can stop being as reliant on property taxes, because those costs would come out of that state and federal funding reestablishment and reinvestment from the state as it goes. I don't anticipate with this being a short session having a ton of time to do a lot of movement on things, but you could guarantee that a lot of the things that we need to be paying attention to that will slip through in a short session when everybody's in a hurry are motor vehicle property taxes, ECS funding, special education funding. We need to look at those kind of things. Teachers' pensions, obviously, the goal is to try to get the state to reinvest in those before those get dumped back onto us, and we're revisiting that again. Resident state trooper programs, making sure that that funding does not dry up and go in the opposite direction. We're already at 85%. In a short session, you may see that slip through in the implementer bill to throw out a 90, 95% or 100% shift over to the small communities. All things that we all need to work together and pay attention to. Like I said, I will get that draft out to you. I'm hoping by tomorrow morning, and then you guys can review it over the weekend, get back to me, send me any questions, concerns, edits, any of that stuff. I'll get it out to the committee first. The committee will review it, get back to me, and then we'll get it out to the general membership to review it and look at, so we can get this off into the hands of our legislators and start working on the stuff. As always, my door and phone is open for all of my colleagues here and across the state to work with you and continue to have a voice for the small towns down in Hartford. And I will, as you know, be very active in short session or long session, doesn't matter. I'll be definitely paying attention to a lot of things and more than happy to answer any questions as they come up by any community member.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think that we should go on quickly to the administrative items. Rob, do you want to handle A?
Sure. Let me just share my screen quickly here. Executive committee met very recently to discuss a number of matters, one of which being the annual membership dues for fiscal year 22-23. Talked about different scenarios, percentages, talked about the change in expenditures and income as far as how we're, potentially, it really has to do with where we're going to go with the COG as far as services. So ultimately, to kind of summarize, the executive committee was more comfortable staying with a consistent assessment ratio of 80 cents per capita. It's the same as the current fiscal year, moving it forward into next fiscal year. And the only change for each individual town would be changes based upon the Department of Public DPH's population changes for 2020. So overall, there's a slight increase from in revenue from 88,000 to roughly 90,000 based upon those population changes year over year.
Can we have a motion to approve this? I'd so move it. A
I'll
second?
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, why don't you just raise your hands on the screen if I can find it. Reactions, I think it is. There you go. Okay, are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's approved. Can we have an approval of the minutes and the approval of the financial statements for December? I think we can make that in a joint motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Charlie seconds. All those in favor signify by, raising your hand. That would work well. Okay, are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I think that's approved. And because of the time, I think we should bring this to an end, but I will ask if there's something important that any member has to do. Otherwise, I'd like to move towards adjournment.
Real quick, Vice Chairman Todd, I just want to publicly thank Selectman Chris for assisting with the legislative efforts this year. And then obviously everybody else, we are in transition here. We have a lot of demands on our staff that are remaining and still, in many ways learning a lot about the job that needs to be done. So just want to make that announcement.
And Henry, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to Janelle for all of her work and commitment. She has always been so amazingly available and just here to help all of us. As a, incoming CEO a couple of years ago, she was just beyond wonderful. So I want to thank her and wish her nothing but greatness in her next part of her journey.
Thank you, Jean.
I concur. Thank you for those
Same here,
comments.
Janelle. Thank you. Best
Thank you,
wishes.
Janelle.
Mhm.
I'll be in the area.
All right, I move that we adjourn. Any seconds? Yeah, okay, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Hey, hallelujah, brothers. Have a great weekend,
And
everybody.
sisters.
And sisters.
Thank you, Todd.
Take care. Bye-bye.